most commonly referred to as the prime rib. Now this is not prime, this is USDA choice, so we'll just call it a rib. But most places when you go out to eat, it'll say prime rib. They're talking about this rib roast. It's a humongous piece of meat. They can't call it prime rib unless it is actually USDA grade prime. You guys remember the grades of beef? You're going to need to know those at the end of this week for your little exam quiz you're going to have, right? I want to know the USDA grades of beef and veal and pork and poultry and fish. Anyway, you get the idea. Huge piece of meat. This is most commonly referred to as prime rib. However, when you cut this thing up raw, this is where you get ribeye steaks. So for those of you who've never heard of a ribeye, anyone here ever had a ribeye steak ever in your life? Okay, so this is where you get it. Again, so you're going to see a lot of the same properties as we had on our short loin. And as I was telling some of the students earlier, this is just an extended piece of the short loin. The short loin would have been out here. This is an extended piece of all of that. Okay. Now you can see they take it completely off the bone. You can see that's why we have these lips of meat here. In some places, when they're going to roast the prime rib, they leave all of this on. They'll score it a bit, season it with salt and pepper, and crush the salt into the meat. They'll take off a lot of this elastin that's left from the bone. You can see it running across the back. You guys see that right there? That's something that your guests will chew and chew and chew and chew. And then again, try to discreetly spit it into a napkin. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that when chewing on a steak when you're eating out and you just keep chewing on that piece of fat. That's because they didn't trim the elastin off. So again, there's a little bit of elastin that comes along this backside. Some chefs will take this off all the way across. I'm going to leave it on. It's a little, I like this piece, especially when it's cooked well. Real heavy concentration of fat right here, and I can feel some right here as well. So those are all going to dictate what my cuts are going to look like. If I know I'm going to be trimming off heavy concentrations of fat here and perhaps here, I'm probably going to want to cut them a little bit wider or thicker so that I can make up for that excess loss. Okay, your guests are certainly going to know. That's one thing you have to keep in mind. We're going to talk about that later in your time here when we get into menu development. When we start talking about costing out menu items, all of that plays a role. It's about what your guests perceive as value. If your guests are portioning off fat on the side of their plate, you think they feel like they're getting a good value. You're going to have to figure that out for yourselves, but we'll probably determine that the answer is no, they don't think that's a great value. And so that's why we do this. That's why we're feeling, touching, kind of getting an idea of what it's going to look like. Okay, so we're going to cook these tomorrow. I'm going to cut off this end piece so that I can start somewhat even. And I won't use that for an example of anything, but you can see, I guess, how concentrated this fat is right here. And again, that was on the New York strip. I don't know if you guys remember when we were cutting that off. There were some heavy concentrations of fat, and so I just went in and trimmed them out. Sometimes you'll get a ribeye that they completely cut that fat out. This fat here and here I'm okay with. But as we get through here, you're going to get larger concentrations of hard fat here. We'll cut that out. We don't want that. Our guests don't want it either. So tomorrow, we have 2 plates to prepare. We did the beef tenderloin today. We did New York strip today, right? So tomorrow, we're going to do beef tenderloin with béarnaise, and we're going to do the ribeye with a horseradish sauce. Okay? So be prepared to make béarnaise. That means you're probably going to have to brush up on some hollandaise skills. Okay? What are some emulsifiers in the hollandaise? Butter is the emulsifier?
Butter and eggs.
Butter and eggs? Anybody else? Lemon juice will be an emulsifier. What else?
In hollandaise?
In a hollandaise, yeah. What's our emulsifier? Do we use egg yolks as an emulsifier or a stabilizer?
Well, that's a stabilizer.
Your yolks are stabilizers. So what are our emulsifiers? It's the water. You guys add water or vinegar to your hollandaise? You know what I'm talking about? A little reduction?
No.
Lemon juice? Okay, that'll work too. But a lot of times when you're making a béarnaise, you're going to take tarragon, you're going to take peppercorns, shallots, and you're going to reduce a vinegar, which we're going to do. We're going to do a reduction of vinegar. That's going to be your emulsifier. That's going to create the emulsifier with the clarified butter, that straight fat content. Okay? Here's what a ribeye looks like. Remember in the strip, it was more flat, kind of big chunk of fat on the top. These are nice and round. This is the cut of the ribeye. And again, if we were to roast this whole thing off and trim it and cut it for our guests, we'd have prime rib, right? It's usually served with a side of the sauce. Tomorrow we're going to grill ribeye, medium rare. It's going on the grill. I'm going to do a demonstration on how we properly season and prepare a grill. Everyone will have a chance to do that. With the grill, anytime you come over here and use it, you will be responsible for cleaning it and re-seasoning it for the next group. Tomorrow we're going to have two plates, so we're going to have 2 groups. One group will do the ribeyes first because we won't have enough space for everyone to throw a ribeye on. So while half of you are doing ribeyes, the other half will do the beef tenderloin. And that way we don't have a cluster over here of hollandaise and everything else. We'll be nice and organized. We're going to do it efficiently and effectively. And then we'll switch halfway through. Okay? Does that make any sense to anybody else?
Yes, Chef.
Yes, Chef.
Okay, so anyway, the horseradish sauce, pretty basic stuff. I will give you a recipe for that tomorrow. Now, look at, this is a humongous cut of meat. We're probably 12 to 14 ounces. So you can kind of get an idea of how this is going to look on a plate. Give you some ideas of how that would fit on a plate. Cut it? No, you don't want to cut this. Something to consider is probably having your own plate just for the beef, and having a separate plate, almost like a la carte, for your starch and veg. Completely acceptable. What were some things that we learned today when you guys brought me your plates? Portions was one.
Even cooking on the steak.
Even cooking on the steak. That's going to be a big deal. We're going to be looking for grill marks. That's actually a competency that the ACF requires before you leave our program. So tomorrow we're going to work on marking it evenly. We're going to put marks on one side, and we're going to put marks on the other, and then we're going to pull it off the grill, and we'll have a nice medium rare steak. Okay, even at this thickness, they're going to cook rather quickly. Okay, so we don't want to burn them. What was another thing that I said to a lot of you? The second you put your plate down and push it in front of me.
Hot plate?
Hot food on hot plates. A lot of you brought me hot food on a cold plate. That's going to bring the temperature of all of your food down. So what we want to do is tomorrow, if this is going to go on a separate plate, which it looks like it probably will, this is a massive cut of meat, I would suggest that you blaze that plate. It needs to be really, really hot. Okay, your starch and veg should also go on a smaller plate, so consider that. Hot plate. Okay? Hot food on hot plates, guys. I can't explain how important that is. If we were to send you out into the industry right now, and all of you turned in a plate to a chef on hot food on a cold plate, they'd be questioning our program. So we've got to learn the basics. Okay, what was something else that we learned? What was that? Seasoning? Is that what you said? Seasoning? Some of you seasoned kind of heavy, right? Some of you didn't season enough. We've got to find that balance. Okay. Tomorrow we'll have different veggies and things like that to work with as well. The potatoes look pretty good for the most part. A couple things I saw with potatoes. Some were really, really soupy. I don't know why. Maybe it's the procedure over here. If we're going to whip potatoes, we want to use russets. We've confirmed that. What we want to do is let them steam out. When they start to look like they're crystallizing on the outside edge and the steam releasing all that moisture, then we can go ahead and cream in the butter and the milk, cold. How many of you melted butter and heated up milk? One of you? One. Well, that's good. We want to make sure that the butter and the milk go in cold. That way it creams in. It makes fluffy potatoes. Okay? Any questions on that? Remember, let them steam out and get rid of that moisture. Some of you have fluffy potatoes while others, man, we had some really runny potatoes.